In the words of the legendary Lou Gellerman, hello, dog fans, and welcome to the Sound the Siren podcast because everything matters, including recapping the spring game, Big Mo on the recruiting trail, and following up with another episode in space of just a little over a month. And it's almost summertime, and that's certainly a cause for celebration in Seattle. I am your host, Hooligan7. I'm joined tonight by Hood, Husky, and DJ. DJ and Hood, how are you gentlemen doing this evening?
Chilling, brother. Big chilling, man.
Good.
Enjoying
Tired.
this weather.
Oh, yeah.
I can echo that. There's a run of birthdays, anniversaries, and all manner of things going on in my family this month. So, yeah, I can empathize with the tired. We are on Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Sound the Siren UW, and as well as on Substack as well at soundthesirenuw.substack.com. Please subscribe and leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you're listening to our show. If you're watching on YouTube, please like this video and hit that subscribe button to get notified when we post new content. If you'd like to support Sound the Siren, you can do so at podcasters.spotify.com/pod/show/soundthesirenpod/UW/support. We are a proud member of the College Huddle. Please check out thecollegehuddle.com and other members of the College Huddle Network. But without further ado, it's beverage time. DJ, you got anything tonight?
I brought out the White Claw specifically for this. Got green apple. It's not
there
too bad.
He is.
That sounds like an interesting flavor, brother.
Yeah, it is interesting, but it's not bad.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll pull in a seltzer form. I can see that working. Hood, what you got tonight, buddy?
I actually, so I got, academic All-American water. So.
Oh, you stepping it up with the water, dang.
Academic prowess water over here. But then, but then I got another bottle with with a Corona in it. So
okay.
Yeah.
Why do you got it in that bottle?
Don't ask no questions. That's why I was laughing before.
What? You sneaking that in somewhere?
Nah, it's just easier to drink out of like the nozzle thing. It's kind of cool,
I can see that.
You drink it a lot faster,
All right. And I'm back on the having a beer on the pod. I've got a Lucky Envelope Brewing crossover with Latona Pub Magic Cap apricot lager. So
I'll try that.
We're missing J Cap, but I've got the Magic Cap.
If I wasn't muted, me and DJ would have simultaneously owed.
You know me and the bougie beer that I get at my local PCC. So
I love it though.
All right, let's go ahead and move into stupid tweets, and I'll go first on this one. And this one goes is from @SeaTimeSports from 5/7/25. When he said the Huskies got a huge recruiting win when they landed touted recruit Derek Coleman Brusa. Here's why, after years of talking to top programs, he landed on UW. And that's from Andy Yamashita. Newsflash to the Seattle Crimes. Despite your best efforts over the last 50 years, the University of Washington Husky football program is a top football program. You know how many schools have been to the college football playoffs twice in the last decade? It's a little bit over a handful, but it ain't a full two hands. Not even with the expanded playoff. So, yeah. Stop denigrating the local school, particularly when it's the local school that, what's left of your subscriber base, a large portion of it graduated from or supports. Get out of here with that bullshit.
Yeah, that's mad whack. Yeah, was a top 10 program, top 8 to 10 program, arguably in since 2014, since the CFP started. So that's mad ridiculous. But we're not going to be out here begging for people to care about us or begging for respect. We what do I say? We working. My stupid tweet is from it's also from about a few weeks ago from 5/8 from Anthony P. Oregon has 3 DBs currently playing in the NFL that are better than any UW DBs in the NFL for the last 2 decades. I'm not even going to entertain that. I just wanted to present him and give him his time. It's bait. You know what I mean? I just wanted to present him his TV time, but to actually press send, I think is the most courageous thing there. I think it's more courageous than rooting for the Mallards. So, yeah, that was ridiculous, man.
I mean, surely that's why at one point Buda Baker was the highest paid safety in the league, right? When he signed his deal. Like
Marcus Peters, like Desmond Trufant, you don't have a corner better than even like Desmond Trufant. At least you said last 2 decades, like that's ridiculous, bro.
Yeah.
I mean,
Trent
I wasn't trying to mention him, trying to avoid like
Trent had a rough Super Bowl, but that doesn't cancel out everything else that Trent has done in the league. Like,
was he two-time All Pro?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
I mean, who does Oregon have that would?
Gonzalez, maybe, and that's
Gonzalez,
like a halfway. That's
Javon
Colorado
Holland.
2 years, and then
Holland. No, like
Javon Holland had like what 1 good year.
Yeah, I mean, he's a fine player, but like,
maybe he was talking about the CFL.
Yeah. Oh, damn! They got us.
Special.
They got us.
You know who actually
the Canadian Football League? Hey, you got us, Ducks.
Yeah, he might have been a Canadian.
You know who's actually had a better career than the majority of Oregon DBs? Ezekiel Turner.
Yes.
The UW DB, he's had better career than the majority of these Oregon DBs that are out here. So I don't want to hear nothing. And that's somebody who was a backup player for us.
How long has he been in the league for? Like 7-8 years.
He's still. I think he's still in the league.
Yeah, he's still a special teams ace.
Pro Bowl. I think he made the Pro Bowl once or twice.
Yeah, like get out of here with that.
Come on, man! Don't play with me.
While we're on the subject, we got to give one more shout out. What's in the box is NFL draft picks. What's not in the box is Jabbar Muhammad.
Oh my!
Oh
damn! That guy.
That transfer, whether that's start to finish development or transfer development down there. I mean,
maybe he.
And I'm even wearing green today, which is basically sacrilege on the pod, but not Oregon green.
That hat's fire though. That hat's fire though.
I got one.
Yeah, go ahead, DJ.
Well, it's kind of like it's not just one, kind of a thread from I think it was started. Look, I thought I was pulling it up. Like a couple days ago, it was these Wisconsin fans. I think it was just mostly one guy just talking all this shit about UW, and he said something about like we're not the real UW, and trying comparing their resume to ours, and it just made them look dumb. And yeah, I think it was like Scooby something was his name, Scooby 27 or whatever his name was. Yeah. That was ridiculous.
Been getting too deep into the Scooby snacks.
Yeah.
They got edibles in them.
Yeah, you guys saw. I know Hood responded to something, so I don't know if you saw that conversation.
Yeah,
Hooligan,
I definitely did, man. I think at this point, man, after engaging, Ohio State fans and Wisconsin fans recently, and I even had a couple Michigan State fans pop off, I'm like, these guys are just like flexing Big Ten superiority, and like they haven't won anything in the conference.
They're like Ohio State's got something to talk about. Michigan's got something to talk about. Anybody other than those two?
That's it. They've been Utah.
Maybe Penn State, but that's
maybe Penn State, but we've been farther in the playoffs than Penn State has.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Our resume is 3rd, 4th in the Big Ten, or at this point, like. So, it is what it is. I ain't begging for no. I ain't begging for.
Are you talking? How far back are you talking to resume 3rd or 4th? Like
this
ever?
Playoff era.
Playoff era. Okay, playoff era for sure. Yeah, I was gonna say we're probably 4th or 5th overall. You got.
Yeah, I would
USC,
say like if you're
Michigan, Ohio State, and probably Penn State, and then
Penn State's got a better history. I mean, like. It depends on kind of how you slice it. If you cut it off at 1960, Minnesota's a elite college football program, but they have Cal won multiple national championships, but it was before World War II.
Yeah.
So I thought football started at like 1994 or something like that, right?
It did. It did.
Yeah. A certain program's football started in 1994, but
They suck.
yeah, but I think what's going along, I mean, it's the same thing that happens every off season on Twitter. There's a lot of fuck around, and I've got some confidence that a lot of fan bases, fall rolls around, they're going to find out.
Completely agree, man. I completely agree, and I'm okay with it. We working.
Yep. I will say we do have a one. I've got some Husky Couture to shout out. I don't know if you guys have anything that you've seen lately, but I want to give a shout out to Goes to Don James on Instagram. Also saw it on Twitter with a Husky golf hoodie and quarter zip that are so nice. We saw they were in the GC the other day, so check that out if you like them. Get in touch with Goes to Don James on IG.
Yeah, so that I really like that homegrown hoodie from Simply Seattle. I don't know if it hit the shop, but
It's there.
all the people that were from Washington in the Washington State logo, like that's
a great point.
mad
Yep.
hard. That's mad hard. You know,
I mean, when does Simply Seattle not hit? Like,
when do they
don't
not hit?
miss.
They're not missing at this point.
Unlike the rest of Big Ten Twitter.
Yeah. I mean, mine's not Husky related, but it's purple. Shout out to Hood's shirt there. I like that.
Yeah. I mean, it is kind of Husky. I mean,
yeah,
we do sing Purple Rain, so
Exactly. Lord have mercy. See, always wearing that purple and gold.
All right, well, let's move into some of the more substantive parts of the conversation and talk about what we saw this spring. Or predominantly, we're talking about the spring game. I definitely think we should talk about like some of the standout players that we saw and from what we've seen of it. DJ, I know you mentioned pre-show that you haven't had a chance to see it. So if you've got any specific questions that you'd like, insight from Hood and I on, I think that would be a great way to go through the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, my biggest.
You want to start on the side of the ball, on a certain side of the ball.
Yeah. We can talk. Let's talk offense.
Yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask about first. I was specifically going to ask about the O-line, how they're looking over there, and I know maybe like not all the guys that maybe starting were playing, I understand, but like how they look overall and some of the young guys specifically.
I think it was. I'll jump in if you don't mind, Hood. And while I don't think what we saw in the spring game from the O-line would, I'm not necessarily going to give them a 10 out of 10, but I'm also not going to give them a 0 out of 10 given how the spring game itself was structured. You had with the way the teams were selected, you didn't have the first string offensive line playing together. So there were elements and there were drives where, the first couple of drives where Jonah was in the backfield. Jonah had some nice runs, saw some good things. What I would say is it was a little less like there were some struggles from the offensive line. Some of the young guys played pretty well. Some of them, had good moments, had some bad moments, and are kind of rounding into form. I certainly think we're going to see younger players play there more this year. I think that there's a reason that they went so heavy as we came down to the finish of the class, bringing in John Mills, obviously hanging on to Champ Aaliyah. I think those guys are going to see the field. Certainly, I would say from a positive standpoint. I think you could basically lock it in stone that Pocky Finau's starting at left guard. I think the tackles. I think it's still to be determined. I think it's probably 75-80% that Carver's going to stay at left rather than flipping back to right. And there's good things, but with anything with the offensive line, I think it takes some time to really gel. That said, we were able to put 2 full offensive lines on the field, if not 3.
Big difference from last year.
Which is a market difference from when we had a first-string offensive line and then 7-on-7s.
And then Hooligan out there last year playing O-line. Okay, so like I mean, like you said, I didn't watch it yet. I've been to the spring game last 5 years, and then more previously, so just gonna make it this year. But anyways, specifically, like what would you guys say? Would you call the starting five for the O line? Like I listened to Locked On Huskies and got their thoughts. Like I don't know if it's different from your guys's, but based on what you saw, what would you guess? I mean, obviously things can change, and maybe guys move around some too. But yeah,
I think it's what Carver, Pocky, Landon, rotation. I think there's going to be a massive rotation there based on the opponent at right guard, and I think it's also a good way to recruit. Like I think it's how you flip, John Mills, and I think it's how you hold on to Champ. Is I think you say there's enough reps here, so I think that's rotation right there. And I actually think hurt. I don't know. I wouldn't say anything showed me this in the spring, but I would say it showed me in game time. I would say I would bet on that right tackle being maybe Max McCree. I think as a party probably is like leading and all that kind of stuff, the narratives and things like that. But I think actually as the games were played last year, Max just had this comfort about him at tackle. So I feel like he's going to probably push through there. But
yeah, he looked solid in his play a couple games last year when he was healthy. So you don't think as a party starts?
You just said first five. Now the benefit of what I just said is that if somebody like Gary and Hatchett is the seventh or eighth offensive lineman on your team, he was the sixth offensive lineman on the Joe Moore award-winning one. So I kind of think of it that way in regards to the depth. If as a party is the sixth guy in, holy hell, like that's crazy. Like Solo started last year, and he's seventh, eighth, ninth,
He could
overall
be tackle 4, yeah.
tackle for. So it's really cool. I think the overall just kind of depth more so than anything. So analyzing like the first five is cool, but then it's almost like based on opponent or based on attrition, you can have anything kind of happen there, which is kind of cool. So
yeah, I certainly think that there's a possibility that the way they start against Colorado State to open the year is not, whether it, even outside of injury, I think guys could grow. I think guys can take over a role. I could certainly see a scenario kind of building off of what Hood said, where Carver starts the year at left, but if Max comes on, Max might be a little bit more comfortable there, and Carver has such experience and strength as a right tackle to lock that spot down if need be. You could see Max start at left, flip Carver back, if as a party or Sawane struggle on the right side, you could see it flip back over, put Max on the left next to Pocky. I think Landon has, the center spot pretty much locked down. I think Hood has a great point that right guard is kind of to be determined. I think that there's a lot of talent, and I think whoever plays there, given the talent that's on the roster, I think we're going to get good play there. I think we're going to also be able to keep guys fresh and have a much bigger rotation. And I don't think it's going to be, the top 7 guys get 85% of the snaps and everybody else gets, here's the leftovers. I mean, I could see that, I think Zach Henning had a pretty good spring game. But I could certainly see, obviously I was a big fan of both, Champ and John Mills, high school tape, the athleticism and size that those guys bring. I think the big thing, and we're talking offense, but I think a big part of it is, generally it's easier to install defenses than it is offenses in the spring. Even with some of the absences due to injury at the edge position, there's just more established and experienced depth on the defensive line. And I think what we saw in the spring game, where the defensive line won a lot, particularly as the spring game proceeded. And I think that's just I think that's both due to scheme. I think that's due to system. And I certainly think that, as we go through, standouts from the game, one of my probably top 3 standouts from the game is certainly a defensive lineman.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because when you ask about the O-line, it's like I tried really hard to not mention the defensive line. You know what I mean? Try to talk about the offensive line without mentioning them. And it's kind of tough. So grading them, you said you feel like it wasn't like this 10 out of 10, but it was also hard to grade them because of just how the rotation on the defensive line was, and then it just seems like that side of the ball has definitely taken a leap. And the like dynamic front or just kind of kept him like off balance all game. The size just kind of kept him off balance all game. But I will say, like, we lost, a pretty solid quarterback last year in the spring portal, because we had 7 offensive linemen and we couldn't get reps. Now we're able to have 5 quarterbacks taking reps all spring to determine quarterback 1, quarterback 2, and quarterback 3. So I think that just the most important thing here is that, you have a Big Ten depth. These guys on the bench are huge. These guys starting are huge. Seeing Carver Willis listed 6'5", like 291, concerning might be the wrong word, but it was in my head. I kind of was like, all right, we kind of need to put a little bit more on Carver. Being agile in this conference is cool, but I felt like, you got to have some beef to you, especially in the run game. So would love to see Carver develop a little bit of that, some more functional strength, functional weight.
But I know we like to talk about body size a lot, but I've heard he's a little lighter on the lower half of his body for Carver, that some people might have some concerns, but we'll see.
It's trying hard not.
Go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say trying hard not to mention the defensive line. I feel like the edges were just super quick too, and it was just really tough for both sides. Had some pretty big gaffes, at times. Obviously they had their good reps or whatnot, but there were some so you can't imagine if you're facing all conference type caliber players, et cetera. But, that's what you got the summer and fall for. So.
Yeah. And I will say that, like, I wouldn't say that I have a bunch of concern about Carver, because he was a stalwart piece of Kansas State runs the damn ball.
Absolutely.
Like, that's
quarterback run too. So he's used to the mobility and not holding on the run.
Yep. Like, and with and speaking to the depth on the offensive side of things, like, we didn't get to see of it again because there wasn't a ton of cohesion in the offensive line. But with the speed, with the foot speed, Jordan Washington, and if we don't want to talk about foot speed coming out of the spring, Jonah Coleman looks faster. Jonah Coleman, the difference from Jonah Coleman in 2024 to what Jonah Coleman is right now is different. And you throw a rotation of Jonah and Jordan and Adam Muhammad, and you can mix in some of the freshmen with Julian McMahon, Quade Carr. I'd love to see us have a situation where we have 2 back sets with Demond, and just absolutely, like, you can mess with, much like what we're going to see with Ryan Walters in the defense, with matchup playing into some matchups and different packages. This offense can do the same thing. You can line up a couple of the receivers in the backfield, split them out, give them a handoff on a jet sweep like they did, like you saw a little bit with Giles. Like, there is some fun to be had, and there's some fun that will be had next fall.
I think if I remember correctly, Jonah Coleman said one of his primary things coming back was focusing on being a better pass catcher and a route runner. So just adding that dynamic element. You talk about 2 back sets, or you talk about him even being, in the screen game, or lined up out wide and, making a play and making somebody miss, on like a spot, or just a 3 to 5 step hitch or something like that, and making somebody miss. So, I'm excited to get him out in space.
A slot corner on Jonah Coleman, trying to tackle Jonah Coleman coming. Slot corner trying to come downhill, trying to tackle Jonah Coleman. To quote Liam Neeson.
Fun. Yeah. Well, I mean, if he wants to play every down, he's got to know how to catch passes and run some routes. So that's good.
Underrated part of the Amari Evans acquisition, who also had a phenomenal spring, is he comes from an offense. He had pushed about 600 yards last year, but he comes from an offense that they run block at wide receiver. So you got Denzel Boston, who takes pride in that. You got Amari Evans, who takes pride in that. Rashid Williams, who takes pride in that. Kevin Green, who takes pride in that. You're going to have, phenomenal blocking on the edges for these running backs too. So, if the perimeter block is going to be excellent as well with their size and strength on the outside. So.
Yeah, and to that point, he didn't necessarily have the standout performance in the spring game itself at wide receiver, but certainly another guy who's a really good blocker out there and had some really nice blocks in the spring game that I noticed is Justice Williams.
Absolutely, yeah. I saw some people on their back.
Yep. Any other questions that you have, DJ, on the offensive side from the spring game?
Yeah, I mean, you guys mentioned about quarterbacks. This is maybe a dumb question, but something happens to Damon, are we completely screwed? I know guys have potential because I've seen them, but like, are we pretty screwed? Because it feels like a lot is riding
I'll
on.
let you answer that, Hooligan. I think this is a very interesting question for sure.
I mean, I think I would say that it significantly lowers the ceiling of the team. Do I think that we are completely like, if Damon gets hurt before we play Ohio State, we're not beating Ohio State. If Damon is out against Ohio State, we're not going to beat Ohio State. Like, unless we pull a defensive find a way to ugly that up and do what Michigan did to them last year and just run the ball down their throat, be effective enough in the running game with, the new pieces that they're going to have on the defensive line and just ground it out and do enough to just sit on them. But I mean, like, and we have a tough schedule, but what team is going to survive without its starting quarterback? Like,
yeah, I was going to say 90% of the teams don't have two guys that can come in and
did I see
dominant.
some things from the quarterbacks? I'll tell you the quarterback that probably stood out to me most from the spring game is Keeney.
Ooh.
And that's no disrespect to Kai. It's no disrespect to Dash, but Keeney flashed. He had a nice game. He threw some really nice passes. He was the donor on a lot of the things that RVB was on the give was gifted or was, I'm not going to say that's probably the wrong metaphor, but I was impressed with Keeney's performance in the spring game for sure.
Same, man. I would say obviously, the ceiling drops, with Damon gone, but Kai was working with the same chaos at offensive line and made it look actually a little bit easier than Damon did.
Mm-hmm.
Especially like getting the ball out of his hand on the move. It seemed like Damon, obviously with that running ability, kind of was, doing a lot of pump faking and things on the run, kind of looking downfield, but more so kind of had that element of I'm going to take off here. Where Kai kind of, you can see he has mobility enough to take off, and he was comfortable doing that. But he's always kind of looking to pass and was making some plays. And Dash made a good throw on the run as well, where Rashawn Clark made a great play to, knock the ball loose. But it just seems like Kai gets the ball out of his hands and tries to get it into his weapons' hands, whether that be quick. He had a great little, I think it was an RPO slant to Justice Williams. Early in the game as well. So he was working with the same chaos and was making things happen in the pass game. So he looks really, really poised. So I'm really curious why he wasn't getting reps at Tulane, which is kind of interesting because he seems really like poised, accurate. It may be his deep ball, but
wasn't it wasn't Darius Mensah their starter?
I
think it was because Darius Mensah was their starter.
And then the year before that, it was somebody else that was really good.
It was Michael Pratt.
Yeah. Michael Pratt.
Yeah, that's Tulane. Yeah, Tulane had a good QB room, and I think, and not to take anything away from Kai, but I also think part of that is probably a little bit of he had a little more familiarity with the receivers that he was working with in the spring game versus with Demond. I think was getting used to like a lot of the number one reps this spring. He's obviously got the report from last season with Denzel, but Omari had a lot of the number one reps at receiver, but Omari did participate in the spring game.
She too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, not a standout concern there, but I think we do need to move into the highlight and the standout of the spring game on the offensive side of the ball.
Yeah. I'm gonna let you take that one. That's your dog, man. That's your dog.
I hate to say I told you so, but
that's your dog, man. What you mean?
But Raiden Vinesbright has arrived. I mean, it is a spring game. Certainly we've heard reports from from our buddies over at Locked On Huskies, among others, that Chris Lawson had a really nice spring as well. But Raiden Vinesbright was all over the field in that game. Was slightly overthrown on a deep route right down the middle of the field that he had cooked was behind two defenders.
Yeah.
Showed an knack for getting open. The body control on the touchdown, I believe, from Keeney toward the end of the game, where he kept a foot in bounds to score. Yeah. Particularly in this system, where this system thrives on having that, like, yes, they want to have solid outside options, the Tetero and McMillans that they had at Arizona, but Jacob Cowing, Dorian Singer, guys that do work in the middle of the field and with versatility to play outside and go over the top. I think the sky's the limit for Raiden, and then I think the sky's the limit for the offense, with the number of weapons that we have in that room. But what a performance from Raiden for sure.
Agreed, man. And like, one thing that's super cool too is they all have different skill sets, and different like expertise. So if you line up Kevin Green, as your wide receiver 3, it's very different than lining up Raiden, than lining up Chris Lawson, and lining up Marcus Harris, than lining up Rasheed Williams. So it's just going to be very interesting based on personnel groupings to see how defenses respond, or how Doherty's able to kind of and Fish are able to take advantage of matchups, just based on defenses not being able to key in on specific numbers. Because typically you're not rotating a ton of DBs in and out. You right. Kind of stick with your top 5 or 6. And
we might be the exception to that rule this fall, but
most certainly we're the exception to that. But I just think we're going to be able to kind of hone in on mismatches at this is like high praise, but at kind of similar to Kalen DeBoer levels, where just the personnel at wide receiver is going to be able to attack slow safeties, box guys, or attack linebackers as well. So,
yeah, I think to that point, I mean, obviously, historically, they've traditionally relied heavily on their top 3 guys, and then it has been kind of scraps or leftovers for everybody else. I think there's a level of talent in this room where it's without question, there's a level of talent. The depth of talent in this room is so much greater than anything that they've had. I mean, obviously, the top end of the room, I don't think there's no disrespect to Denzel Boston. Denzel Boston is not Tetero McMillan. I think he could be close, but Tetero McMillan was not Tetero McMillan this past fall without Jed Fish. So,
and Jacob Cowing was a top 10 receiver in the history of college football. So, like, they had some solid guys there.
They had some solid guys, but it was what was after those solid guys at the top. I don't think their 4 through 8 was anything close to what we have in this room right now, or what we have in this room. And we haven't even talked about the fact that Desmond Roebuck and Deji Ajose are coming to campus this fall.
Yeah, stacked.
And something else we haven't talked about, and I wanted to mention, is it looked like Quentin Moore was healthy, attempting a hurdle on his first catch. So, like, with a brace on, so it seemed like he was healthy. And then, okay, you have that. We haven't even talked about that position there.
Plus Decker. He had one. Decker had one that he should have had, but
yeah. Solid, okay defense.
Yeah, okay defense. But Justice also had one that he should have had up along the sideline, where I think the timing I think was just off. And Justice jumped for it, and then the ball got there, and I think either hit him in the foot or hit the DB in the shoulder. Like, Justice was jumping for the ball this way, and the ball was here, but it happens, and better in the spring than in the fall to see where that could go back the other direction.
Exactly, and I think the reps are just the most important now. I think Marcus Harris had a touchdown as well. But to your point about just quarterbacks, man, like, Dash had flashes. Keeney had a ton of flashes. The velocity on his throws is ridiculous. He's gonna kind of funny. Similarly to Michael Penix, where it, even if it's a deep ball, it still has like this heavy velocity to it. And that's what Keeney has as well. So it's like, it's not lofted in there, kind of like that moon ball that Russ has. It doesn't have that loft, but it gets there, and it's got the right trajectory. So I
Yeah.
think Keeney might actually fight for some. He might apply some pressure over the next couple of years to some of the guys on the roster, in my opinion.
Yeah,
So,
no, a great spring from Keeney for sure. And I mean, we talked about that in the recruiting that he didn't throw the moon ball. That the one thing that may be a development area for him is to show some different layering and not just spam the fastball. To use a baseball, he needs to work in a slider or a sweeper. He needs to
off speed
work with the Mariners pitching coaches.
But that's something you were saying. You've been saying since every time we talk about him is the velo on his ball, the accuracy on his ball. I think they even mentioned it in the broadcast. Like there was like casual banter, and then he throws like a 5 to 8 yard out, and then the announcer stops and goes, "Oh my goodness, you see that throw?" Like, and that was like I don't think it was opposite hash, but it might have been between the hash. Got that bad boy out of there. So
yep.
Oh yeah. Was talented.
Kai had that one that RPO to Justice. Kai had to fit it into had to hit a nice window for that throw as well. So
I'm confident in the quarterbacks, DJ. I think we might maybe lose one just because there's 5. But it might be off the strength of just the depth there. But they all look pretty solid, yeah, for sure.
Yep. All right. Do we want to flip over to the other side of the ball?
Let's do it.
What was that laugh?
All right.
Bro, these guys, this defense is going to be very fun to watch, bro. Like, DJ, bro.
Yep.
The swag is like back. Like, the freshmen are like leading the troop in it too, which is the crazy part.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it's.
I would say that like the primary standout on that side of the ball, and this is a tough competition because there were some dudes that were balling in that game. But it's Rashawn Clark.
Ooh, word. Okay.
Oh,
okay.
I mean, it the margin. He wins it in my opinion by a much closer margin than Raiden did on the offensive side in terms of the standout from the spring game. But Rashawn was all over the field. Physicality, tackling, breaking up passes, closing speed. My goodness.
They're not going to be able to keep him off the field, man.
What was... I don't want to keep beating a dead horse, but I'm going to in this instance. Again, what in the fuck was our previous staff, Courtney Morgan, Kalen DeBoer, Chuck Morrell, what in the motherfucking hell were they thinking? Trying to slow play or not want to take Rashawn Clark. Like, you are out of your goddamn mind.
Not prioritizing this kid, man.
I mean, what did they do recruiting? I don't understand their whole mindset that they had. I mean, that's a whole different discussion. But like,
yeah, it is what it is. I mean, he got everybody around him recruiting for him now. But anyway, yeah, man. Defense. Okay, I guess if you want to start with defensive MVP, that might be. I will say, I'll give Rashawn Clark the defensive MVP of the whole spring. And since I'm doing that, I got to give it to somebody else for the game, and I'm giving it to Bryce Butler.
Oh yes.
Listen, it has been a while since I've seen the explosiveness, the quickness, the pursuit, the disruptiveness, and you got to think about the size and the leap that this offensive line took. It didn't matter who was in front of him, who they decided to rotate in front of him, because they definitely had like random people moving the center and moving all over the place, putting random people at tackle and stuff. On the same drive too. He was in the backfield. Him and Ty were. I want to say it right. Apologies, but Uyangalele. Both of them. I think those two plus. I would say in the season, right? Those two plus Ontario are going to be a problem every single week. Every single week. Maybe Bryce in a rotation, but oh yeah, Bryce gets my defensive MVP.
Nice. Hey, I don't know if you were on that, but like me and you guys know Alex from Twitter, but We've been
Mhm.
Bryce Butler fans since day one. It's like since we saw him play. I forgot what game it was, but yeah, like he stood out like one of the early games. Might have been the
I
first
liked his
game.
JUCO tape.
Yeah, yeah,
That,
It,
yeah.
and then it was a bummer he didn't didn't play most of the year. But yeah, I'm excited for him. So I'm glad you mentioned his name.
And he may have gotten extra eligibility if he wanted to with like that JUCO stuff too. So,
If he balls
uh,
out the way you're saying, he may not need to use it. Not saying
well,
he's
I
gonna go
think
first round, but like may just get drafted mid round sometime or
mhm.
something.
they were running like 5-man fronts. Having 3 down linemen, 4 down linemen, one guy standing up, and that guy standing up typically was a linebacker. So a guy like Hayden Moore is now an edge, kind of. He doesn't really play traditional linebacker anymore. A guy like Jonathan Epperson, who we saw as a on-ball linebacker. He's playing edge. He was playing edge more than anything. So, or at the line of scrimmage, if anything. So, pretty interesting. Kind of some of the fronts here. I would say somebody else that I would that really stood out. And there's a lot of defenders that stood out, but I'm kind of trying to focus on the front seven because the back end had a dang day. Devin Bryant,
Mm.
Lord have mercy.
Yeah.
Bad out of hell.
Body transformation.
Huh.
Like
We love
Devin
the
came in
bodies.
6 foot, like 205, 210.
Uh-huh.
Like, I mean,
Had the instincts, but didn't have the physical stature.
Right. Devin Bryant is a Big Ten linebacker because the foot speed is not gone. The size, the muscular. I mean, like, Devin Bryant looks like Jonah Coleman did last fall.
Uh-huh.
I mean, and I don't mean that in a bad way at all. Or what was it Jay Higgins, the standout linebacker for Iowa?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Jay Higgins.
Yeah, that kind of player, but faster. I think faster. Like Devin Bryant's going to be and I would also say like I want to just shout out the entire defensive line. Like, Ontario, Omar Khan had some nice plays. Armon Parker.
Armon had put people on their ass
like
If he can play like that, that'd be huge.
if we
Alinea
get a lot of
depth.
Davis.
Alinea Davis, like,
oh yeah, Davis.
Here's where I think I'm gonna have right now, health allowing. If we can keep the majority of that unit and what we saw healthy, what happened last fall where we were getting ground into the dust with the power running game is a thing of the past. And then you were going to go, you're going to be able to attack the offense. You're just like, okay, block me. All right, well, we're going to be bringing this athlete who's fresh and strong and fast. Block him now. Like,
it's mostly just the depth, dude. Like, okay, like Iowa was just able to lean on the starters. When you're relying on Sebastian Valdez every single play and you can't sub him out, when you're relying on Jacob Bandis every single play, you know what I mean? Like, that's wild.
You are
now
going
you
to
can
get
take
fatigued.
guys out and they can have impact. Sagapolu, his second year on that side of the ball. Samote Peppa, like both over 340. You can rotate nose tackles now. You don't have to have a first-year defensive lineman trying to figure that out. And then you take somebody like Uyangalele, who's essentially Voy in a 6'5", 285-pound body instead of the kind of smaller, diminutive version. He's just a lengthy version. So it's going to be, and then Ontario kind of taking that Sebastian Valdez position. So it's going to be very, very interesting with that depth there for sure. Yep. And then kind of that 4 deep at linebacker as well. 4 or 5 deep.
Buddha, you've got Buddha, you've got Devin,
Alexander.
Yeah.
You've got Jure, you've got potentially Jacob Manu.
Epperson's getting a lot of tick right now.
Yep.
I mean, just going to that practice. I only went to a single practice, but just seeing the physical stature of ZRS was impressive. I had no idea he was that big, and consider how he moves. Like, Lord have mercy. Like, I did not know he was that big. Like, Jacob Manu they were doing like off the field stuff because they were hurt, and Jacob Manu was like to his bicep. And I'm like, these are both linebackers. They play the same position. Like,
Kind of.
that was crazy.
Oh, I was going to ask because you mentioned it at the very beginning. We're talking about defense. But then I know I've already talked about D line and linebacker a good amount too. But what freshmen do you guys see playing a decent amount on defense? Is there any? I mean, there might obviously.
Yeah, I mean, everybody was playing. Obviously, Rashawn Clark as a redshirt freshman.
In the spring game, but
Batman had a pick six, and so RDA had a pick six, and it was just hilarious. Like, there was no hesitation from those young guys, man. They hopped immediately on the railing. We're dapping up fans and stuff like that. So what I take from things like that is I take these kids are ready for the spotlight and early. This is your first spring ball, and you're already embracing the noise. And it was a bigger crowd than it typically kind of usually is for our spring games. Furthermore, it kind of, I would say on the other side of the ball too with RVB. I think it was Cummings that was like, oh yeah, RVB. Chris Lawson balls in practice, but RVB just showed that when the lights come on, he is ready to answer the call. So on the other side of the ball, kind of seeing a guy like RDA take in all the light, have a pick six, celebrate with the fans. The teammates were also celebrating with him, which was super cool. But yeah, I would say that's another freshman too. Elias Davis, is he still a freshman, redshirt freshman? I believe he's a redshirt frashman.
Elias Johnson, the one with the interception.
Elias Johnson, sorry.
Johnson, yeah.
Elias Johnson, yeah. Was getting picked on, but had his own turnover, had his own interception when attacked one-on-one, so he had a good day as well.
Yeah, and when Elias was getting picked on, it was a little freshman on freshman crime because it was a lot of RVB doing it to him. And having a hard time staying with Raiden Vinesbright was not an isolated issue in the spring game at all. So, yeah, I mean, I think RDA particularly, like, here's the thing, like we talked about, I think ZRS, if he hadn't gotten hurt, would absolutely have played next fall and been, I don't think he would have been in any danger of redshirt. And I think it depends on the recovery. I could see, Zadrius redshirting, and I could see him not playing. We're also talking, and we haven't even talked about, like we talked about with Deji and Desmond in the receivers. Some of the most talented defensive guys that we brought in this class aren't even on campus yet. In Dylan Robinson, Donovan Robinson, those are guys that could absolutely, potentially see the field. But again, we might have the luxury of redshirting some guys that in other situations, or that if they were a year earlier would absolutely have played. Because there's just so much more depth.
You consider, to your point, with the depth, you consider something like, let's say Manu or ZRS. The bowl games don't count as games towards your red shirt. You can play the last 3 games of the season, or 2 games of the season, or last singular game of the season, and then play in the bowl game, and then not count against those 4 games. So you never know when that depth is going to be clutch as well. I'm just super surprised. Like, Hooligan, I know you're trying to do it too, but we got to talk, man. These safeties, man. Alex Smith-Laughlin with a pick, with a PBU. CJ Christian with an interception.
Pick six.
Oh, if it wasn't for Jonah.
Yeah,
Alex McLaughlin, I think.
Speaking of, and shouts to Jonah for that is the example you set for an entire roster. Like, you are the one of the, you are in this situation because Denzel wasn't playing. You are the standout senior, most experienced player on that side of the ball, and you chased it in the spring game when it doesn't matter for shit, and you chased him down.
You showed that all-season work too. You know what I mean? And I think that just speaks to the culture that's being established and the fun that these guys are having, man. Like, I think Rasheed didn't play either, right? So you didn't play your top 3 wide receivers, and you just let the young guys ball and have fun while everybody's talking ish on the sideline. I think the announcers, because I wasn't able to go, so I had to watch it. I think the announcers were saying were distracted by Taylor Mays and his antics on the sideline, just because the energy was crazy because his room was balling out. So like, just the energy is very different. They have a lot of trust in the process. A lot of these guys are the guys that they've recruited and they've created relationships with, and we haven't even talked about guys like Michaela Steen, who's probably a shoe-in starter. Vince Holmes, who's going to be a rotating starter. We haven't talked about Ephesians or Takaria. We're talking about everybody else. So that's the crazy part. We're not even talking about the best players on the roster.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, I mean, if Vincent Holmes is, somewhere in like the safety 2 or 3 range or safety 4, like, and Vincent Holmes is going to be a player. Like, he is a player right now. I think Leroy Bryant had a good day. In terms of, I think Leroy's a redshirt freshman now. Like, I just,
great call.
It is like anybody, and what I'll say is, in terms of, we were talking about the narrative, or, the conversations and stupid tweets from Wisconsin fans and Michigan State fans, is just Husky fans, on Twitter for the next 5 months, or, until the season starts. We're 97 days away or whatever. So 3.5 months, or let them talk. They're going to find out. Let them say, oh, you guys went 6-7 last year. Like,
yep. Let them. I love it. You know what I love? I love consistency. I love trends. I love 2005 season. I love the 2021 season and the following seasons after that. So I love trends.
How much did we hear after 20? In the spring of 2020. Let's rewind the clock 2 years. How much did we hear about? Oh, you guys lost to UCLA. You guys lost to Arizona State. How much did we hear about that?
Mm-hmm.
What happened after?
Belt to.
Not quite as, health and some some significant, Chuck Morrell.
Oh man, I've heard that name for a while.
To think that was also a playoff caliber team.
Yeah.
I
mean, you put this defense with that offense.
Oh my gosh, man.
Good night.
I think the scheme is a little bit like, just to kind of speak on it. I think the corners are definitely gonna, they have the talent, but they're gonna be asked to do a lot more than what we've seen their capacity is on film. So, they're both kind of zone guys that, really rely on their length, and they want to like interrupt timing, interrupt the timing of routes, and force tough releases, and allow our rush to get there. I think the fact that our defensive line is much better is going to allow those guys to have a great season for sure, and allow guys like Michaela Steen and Alex McLaughlin, who are more box safeties, to kind of roam and create more turnovers. I just definitely think that the way this Ryan Walters' defense is built, and the way that they went out and got specific players for the scheme, there's going to be a lot of turnovers for sure.
Yeah, and the other key piece of this is look at the rest of the kind of, looking externally, look at the rest of the conference. Like, yeah, Illinois got a really good quarterback in Dylan Altmaier, but they lose a bunch at receiver. Ohio State bringing in a new starting, will have a new starting quarterback. Yeah, of course, they've got the best receiver in college football, if not the best player in college football, in Jeremiah Smith, or on, best offensive player and best defensive player. But it's a lot more than 2 players, and they lose a ton from last year. And like, for the most of, a lot of the other teams that we play this year, they are not going to have quarterbacks and offensive systems that are going to be able to understand and comprehend and react, unless the caveat is if teams find out that they can do what they did to us last year and just grind us into oblivion with the run game, that's where we will have a problem. But other than that, in terms of if you force a team to have to throw on this defense, and with what Ryan Walters can do as a defensive coordinator, and with the depth and with the pieces and the chess match.
I heard Dante Moore is a generational talent, though.
Even to Illinois, though, they had RB1A and RB1B last year. RB1B RB1A got hurt, and their guy that ended up, Josh McCray, their guy that ended up starting the majority of the year, the rest of the year, transferred and went to Georgia just recently as well, like super late in the process. So they even lost their bell cow. A guy who obviously, if Georgia's, obviously you're leaving at that point, you're tampering. So if Georgia's tampering with you, you're pretty good, right? So now they kind of lost another huge weapon on their team. So I'm not really
and that game's here.
And Luke Altmaier, that whole offense works more off script than it does on script. When it's on time, it's not really good. When he's scrambling and making all these miracle plays is when it's kind of like good, and when they have, when their offense is kind of clicking. So,
but they don't have Zachary Franklin there either anymore. So
at all, and didn't they? I think they just got a receiver in the portal though. But either way, like Illinois, I'm not worried about them. The experience at quarterback is the main thing that they're bringing. I would say the main team that I'm concerned about, and it's because of the circumstances, is Billy Edwards in Wisconsin. I think because we're playing them away, I believe. And I saw how Oregon struggled with them at Camp Randall. Camp Randall's just definitely different. And until we win on the road, I'm not going to take us on the road. I think that's what DJ was saying last year. Until we can prove we can win a tough game on the road, I'm not gonna take us on the road. So that's a tough game there.
But Wisconsin also has a murderer's row of a schedule. Luke Fickell could be no longer their head coach by the time we roll into Camp.
By the time we get him, yeah.
So it's
Hood. So you're gonna pick WSU over UW in that first game? Oh, not first game, but the third game.
Not at all, man. Shouldn't have lost to them last year. Shouldn't have lost to Rutgers last year. At the end of the day. So that I think it's unfortunate that those two losses happen, because I think you have a different conversation and a different. I think you have more national media helping you market instead of Casey Byers is doing one hell of a job with some of those videos and a lot of the content. Casey Byers and his team are doing one hell of a job right now, just kind of marketing the program. I love the way they've kickstarted this offseason, this content creation. But imagine if you had a 9-win season because you executed versus Rutgers, or 8-win season. Sorry, if you execute against Rutgers, you execute against Wazoo.
I mean, and Louisville too.
9 yeah. One play different.
I was looking at the schedule, and it just reminded me of how they screwed us in a lot of ways with like the buys and the opponent's buys. Like stupid.
Schedule's the schedule. Win games.
Yeah, I get it. I mean, there's some things you can't control, and you just got to win them. So that's the one thing you can't control.
Just go win games. Let's talk about the other area that we have a little bit. Like, I don't want to spend an hour on this subject, but we do have to talk about that there has been a big or a continued acceleration of the ball rolling down the hill on the recruiting side of things. You flip a 5-star offensive tackle from Mater Dei in Cody Green.
Flipped him from where? Coleman. Where is he committed to?
Is that a mallard?
Or they used to say whack, whack, now they're doing
see? Bunch of crybabies.
Yeah.
The sky ain't so damn blue and the grass ain't so damn green in Eugene, clearly.
Come on.
Obviously Cody, I mean, how many times do we get a 5-star out of, yes, grew up in the Seattle area, but at Mater Dei, on our roster a year from now will be a 5-star offensive tackle plus a quarterback from Mater Dei plus a 4-star receiver. How often does that happen in UW history? It doesn't.
Yeah.
It doesn't. I believe Coker, was the first to mention that. So shouts to Coker. Locking down Derek Coleman-Brusa. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to watch any of the, either Cody's film, Derek Coleman DCB's film, or, and I don't want to sleep on Derek Zammit either. Good things are happening right now. The message is landing. I mean, real quickly on Cody Green, mobility and size and room to add more to the frame. Like, that's what a 5-star tackle looks like. for such a well-spoken, I know, Roman and Lars had him on Locked on Huskies, for, great, well-spoken, really, nice kid in DCB. That guy plays like an asshole. If you watch Derek Coleman Bruce's film, he plays like an ass. But on the field, that man is an absolute asshole. And God, it's beautiful.
I agree, man.
And then, going to Derek Zammit, a quarterback from New Jersey, from Jed Fish's home state. And watching the tape, I know I was listening to catching up on the 4th and Inches podcast earlier today, and Trevor had the comp to Keith Price, and I see it a little bit. I think there's more arm strength and certainly a bigger frame than KP17. I'm still struggling to come up with a comp for Derek. I really liked the tape. It's kind of a little bit of what we see with Keeney, but with that different, we were talking about the thing that Keeney needs to develop was the layering and the touch on certain throws. Derek Zammit has it. He's got the fastball when he needs it. He's got the ability to throw on the run, but also understand, placement and when to feather a ball in somewhere and when to just let it rip. Can't be more encouraged by what's going on. Certainly wish nothing but success for Terrence Sarian flipping over to BYU. From the rumblings, it's because we're in, and we've got lions in the water, and attention from some big fish.
Yeah, that was a kid who threw up to Oregon at the UW football game to me as he was passing by, and then he committed to UW like 3 weeks later. So I thought that was funny. But Derek Zammit, if you just watch the first, minute of his huddle of 2024, it's insane. I mean, obviously these are highlights. He's not making those plays like every series or anything, but it just shows what he's capable of doing as a junior who's 16, 17 years old. Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, didn't know much about him prior to his commitment, but I definitely watched some tape of him, and yeah, he's nice. And yeah, it's crazy. You mentioned already, but from New Jersey, like I don't know what the connection is there with him or what it was, but yeah, you don't see skin guys from New Jersey too often.
I mean, I've been told we're not a national brand.
Oh yeah.
We're not one of the powerhouse.
I would say if Derek realized, I'll put it on the record now. And I said if Derek realizes his potential, he's going to make a lot of our opponents' fan bases go, God damn it!
God. I totally agree with you on Cody. Wildly athletic. That's what a 5-star tackle looks like.
The feet.
It's the feet, man. And then when you're an athlete like that, there's just this confidence that comes with it. And then when you're at like a place of pedigree like Mater Dei, there's also a confidence that comes with it. And he kind of like embraces all the pressure that comes with that position at Mater Dei as well. So super cool. Strong hands. Looks like he has solid length at this point as well. And to your point, like putting on listed 6'6", 285, so has a ton of room to add to that frame. Yeah, man. I put down that he reminds me of Andre Dillard. So I know that's a Coug, but just his size, frame, his overall athleticism, and things like that. So really, really impressed with him.
Yeah, I mean, he can start day one if he continues to work. Like, doesn't come in like to feel like he's entitled to anything. If he continues working like he has been, he can start day one if he wants to.
I completely agree. And you got to think with the physical development of the 2025's class, their senior year, you know damn well that they're going to put a goal on the table for him to be able to play year one. Same they did with Champ. Same obviously they've done with some other players in the wide receiver room. So yeah, I completely agree. He can definitely compete. That room's going to be wildly deep next year, or super deep next year. I'm not saying his name. Hikilma. the 6'8", 325. You know, we got tackles galore with size that he's gonna have to compete with. So, and just to Brusa, man, Lord have mercy. I'm trying to compare him to somebody who's not a white edge player. So like Nick Bosa and Trey Hendrickson. I'm trying to find someone who's not that. But obviously relentless motor, great hands, great explosiveness, great strength. You said he plays like an asshole. I say he plays with high IQ as well. On top of that, so that's also a player that can come in year one and definitely contribute. If you're a Husky fan that's excited about guys like Zach Durfee, he's already Zach Durfee's size. You know what I mean? So that's freaking crazy.
Yeah, we'll give you a sneak peek when we go through the F-Bombs recruiting scale for this class. Football instincts for Derek Coleman Bruce is going to be a 5. The one critique is might want to slightly reduce the desire to hit wrestling finishing maneuvers.
Yeah.
Well,
he's
but
just
other
a
than
jerk
that,
out there.
I mean,
he's a jerk out there.
Just so strong, and I mean, but it's good times to be a Washington Husky fan.
It is. And I mean, you guys mentioned mentioned Zammit. A lot of obviously everybody that watches him is going to be impressed with his off-platform, stuff and his mobility as well, and just his competitive nature. He definitely has. It's not the overall arm strength, but he definitely has a lot of kind of like Matthew Stafford to me. Just with like a lot of the off-platform, a lot of the confidence in the arm. If you hit the weights, you can definitely fit those in those types of holes that a guy like Stafford did. And then just kind of just some of the other guys as well. Ansu Sano, a big running back who's definitely downhill. Reminds me of kind of Minnesota's guy, Darius Taylor. Just that kind of that one cut burst downhill, tough to tackle. Everybody's going to try to go low, but he has a great semi hurdle move to kind of make you whiff at those ankle bites. And then you're kind of low. You're traditional. This is super interesting. I think the state of Washington is becoming this kind of one or two guys a year in regards to DBs that are super technical. They don't always make the P5, P4 level, but there's always those splash guys, and I definitely feel like Elijah Durr is that guy, kind of like De'Aaron Clemens last year. That just comes from local pedigree, the local systems. He's kind of gone through that collegiate training and those types of things. A technical warrior with size, so. I think Durr is a great addition as well. And then you talk about modern day and Cody Green and winning big battles. You go to IMG again after snagging RVB and grabbing Kasani Giles, a super physical corner, our type of guy for sure. We love these types of DBs that come down here and play. He could obviously be versatile enough to play, safety as well. But I love his attitude at corner so far.
CJ Lavender, also a great pickup.
Great pickup from modern day as well, right?
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I think CJ Lavender is maybe modern day as well. And then the local guy was Adion Young.
Adion Yang, yeah.
Yang, sorry. Boy, look, see, I got the poly names down. But when it comes to
who are you, me?
CJ is modern
butchering
day.
all the names.
Hey, look, man, I'm just D&I hired. I didn't can't read all them syllables and things. Shit. Kasani Giles was a tough one. KSANI? No apostrophe? But that's a big boy. Holy moly. You tighten that up. You tighten that up with his size. I think he was at a camp this week or something like that. Look, I've avoided a lot of it today. Look, I've avoided a lot of it today.
Here we go off the rails.
Oh, see,
it's only an hour 9 in.
It's been an hour for DJ. Look, the kids got DJ delirious. But yeah, theme is just Big Ten size all over the place, Big Ten aggression all over the place in this class. Obviously, the cool little crystal ball recently. It's some great news as well. You
Sammy
have
Lutu
the
and
best O-line classes in the country. You snag him at this point. So great thing, great days to be a Husky at this point. We working.
yep. There's a lot of the staff is absolutely killing it on the trail right now, and it's great to see, and nothing but good things to come. We will. Anything else that we want to chat about this evening, or should we call it a night? All right.
So we all gravy.
We will be back soon. We'll dig deep. Probably, I would say, another couple commits roll in, and we'll start digging into the F-Bombs recruiting scale, at least for the partial class. If any other news news breaks, we'll certainly be back on. But everybody, thanks for listening. DJ and Hood, thanks for joining me tonight. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs.